June 28th, 1969. The Stonewall Inn, Greenwich Village, New York City. Police are raiding the bar, again. But tonight is different. Tonight someone fights back. A brick flies through the air, then another, and suddenly a revolution begins. At the center of it all stands a 25-year-old black trans woman in a bright red dress and flower crown, refusing to back down. Her name is Marsha P. Johnson, and she's about to change the world. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel where we uncover the hidden heroes who shaped our world. I'm your host, and today we're diving into a story that's been whitewashed, straightwashed, and nearly erased from history. But it's a story that absolutely needs to be told. If you're ready to learn about the fierce black trans woman who helped launch the modern LGBTQ+ rights movement, smash that subscribe button and let's get into it. Malcolm Michaels Jr. That was the name on the birth certificate. Born August 24th, 1945 in Elizabeth, New Jersey, to a working-class black family. But from the earliest age, this child knew something was different. Picture a 5-year-old sneaking into their mother's closet, trying on dresses and heels. Picture Sunday school where this little boy would rather play with the girls, feeling more comfortable in their world than anywhere else. Malcolm's mother, Alberta, was deeply religious. She saw her child's behavior and did what many parents in the 1950s did. She tried to pray it away. She sent Malcolm to a psychiatrist. She enrolled him in church programs. She hoped and prayed that this phase would pass. But what Alberta didn't understand, what most people in 1950s America couldn't understand, was that her child wasn't broken. Malcolm wasn't sick. Malcolm was simply born in the wrong body, in the wrong time, in a society that had no words for what they were experiencing. School was hell. Other kids sensed the difference and attacked it with the cruelty that only children can manage. Malcolm was called every slur imaginable, beaten up regularly, and made to feel like a freak. But here's what's remarkable about the person who would become Marsha P. Johnson. Instead of being crushed by this rejection, they transformed it into strength. If the world was going to treat them as an outsider, they would become the most fabulous outsider anyone had ever seen. At 17, with just $15 and a bag of clothes, Malcolm ran away to New York City. It was 1963, and Greenwich Village was becoming a haven for everyone who didn't fit in anywhere else. Artists, beatniks, hippies, and people who today we would call LGBTQ+. But even in this more accepting environment, life was brutal for a young black person exploring their gender identity. Malcolm tried sex work to survive, slept in parks, and faced constant danger from both police and violent clients. It was during this time that Malcolm began experimenting with drag, performing in small clubs and gradually developing the persona that would become legendary. They chose the name Marsha, and when people asked what the P stood for, they would say with a huge smile, "Pay it no mind." That phrase, "pay it no mind," wasn't just a joke, it was a philosophy. It was Marsha's way of saying, "I am who I am, and if you don't like it, that's your problem, not mine." To understand what Marsha P. Johnson did, you have to understand what the world was like for LGBTQ+ people in the 1960s. Homosexuality was illegal in every state except Illinois. Police regularly raided gay bars, arrested patrons, and published their names in newspapers, destroying their lives and careers. It was illegal for men to wear women's clothing. Trans people had no legal protections and no medical support. The Stonewall Inn was one of the few places where LGBTQ+ people could be themselves, but even there, they lived in constant fear. The bar was owned by the mafia, who paid off corrupt police to look the other way, until they didn't. Police raids were routine. The protocol was simple. When the cops showed up, you submitted. You let them arrest you. You paid your fine or spent your night in jail. You accepted that this was the price of being different in America. But on the night of June 28th, 1969, something shifted. Maybe it was the oppressive summer heat. Maybe it was the recent death of Judy Garland, an icon beloved by the gay community. Maybe it was just that people had finally had enough. The raid started like all the others. Police stormed into the Stonewall Inn around 1:20 a.m., flashing their badges and demanding IDs. They began separating the crowd, men here, women there, anyone in drag to be arrested. But when they grabbed Marsha P. Johnson, something unprecedented happened. She fought back. According to multiple eyewitness accounts, Marsha threw a shot glass at the mirror behind the bar, shattering it into 1,000 pieces. Some say she threw the first brick. Others say it was a high-heeled shoe. The exact details may be disputed, but what's not disputed is this: Marsha P. Johnson refused to go quietly. Her resistance sparked something that had been building for years. Suddenly, other patrons joined in. Bottles started flying. Someone ripped a parking meter out of the ground and used it as a battering ram. The crowd outside grew larger and angrier. The police, who were used to easy arrests and quiet submission, found themselves barricaded inside the bar, calling for backup as an angry mob surrounded the building. For the next 6 days, riots continued throughout Greenwich Village. It was the first time in American history that LGBTQ plus people had fought back en masse against police brutality. And at the center of it all was Marsha P. Johnson, this fierce, fabulous black trans woman who had decided she was done being silent. The Stonewall riots didn't end discrimination against LGBTQ plus people, but they did something equally important. They showed that resistance was possible. In the aftermath of Stonewall, Marsha co-founded Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries, STAR, with her close friend Sylvia Rivera. STAR was radical in ways that even today seem progressive. They provided housing for homeless LGBTQ plus youth, fought for transgender rights, and demanded that the broader gay rights movement include its most marginalized members. Marsha and Sylvia literally opened their own apartment as a shelter for kids who had been kicked out of their homes for being gay or trans. They fed them, protected them, and gave them a place to belong when their own families had rejected them. But here's what makes Marsha's activism so remarkable. She understood intersectionality before it had a name. She knew that as a black trans woman, she faced multiple forms of discrimination, and she refused to fight for gay rights while ignoring racism, or fight for racial justice while ignoring transphobia. This put her at odds with mainstream gay rights organizations, who often wanted to present a more respectable image to straight America. They pushed for assimilation, arguing that gay people were just like everyone else and deserved rights because they were normal law-abiding citizens. Marsha rejected this approach completely. She wasn't interested in being respectable. She was interested in being free. Being a revolutionary is exhausting, and Marsha paid a heavy personal price for her activism. She struggled with mental health issues throughout her life, cycling through periods of hospitalization and homelessness. The constant stress of fighting for survival while also fighting for justice took its toll. Marsha also faced rejection from within the LGBTQ plus community itself. As the gay rights movement became more mainstream in the 1970s and 80s, many organizations distanced themselves from transgender activists, viewing them as too radical and potentially damaging to their cause. This was devastating for Marsha, who had risked everything to start the movement, only to watch it leave her behind as it gained respectability. She continued her activism anyway. Throughout the 1980s, she volunteered with AIDS patients, providing care and comfort to people who were dying from a disease that the government ignored because it primarily affected gay men and drug users. Marsha posed for Andy Warhol photographs, performed with the drag troupe Hot Peaches, and continued advocating for the homeless LGBTQ+ youth that mainstream organizations ignored. She remained a fixture in Greenwich Village, instantly recognizable in her colorful outfits and flower crowns. On July 6, 1992, Marsha's body was found floating in the Hudson River near the Christopher Street Pier. She was 46 years old. Police quickly ruled her death a suicide, despite having done virtually no investigation. Friends and activists were outraged. Marsha had been in good spirits recently, making plans for the future. She had also been receiving death threats and had told friends she was being harassed by violent men. For 25 years, Marsha's death remained classified as a suicide. It wasn't until 2017 that activists succeeded in getting the case reopened as a possible homicide. The investigation is still ongoing. Whether Marsha was murdered or took her own life, her death represented a tragic loss for the LGBTQ+ community and a stark reminder of the violence that transgender women, especially transgender women of color, continue to face. For decades after her death, Marsha P. Johnson's contributions were largely forgotten. The gay rights movement that she helped create moved toward mainstream acceptance, but often did so by erasing its most radical origins. But in recent years, there's been a resurgence of interest in Marsha's story. Activists, scholars, and artists have worked to restore her rightful place in history as one of the founders of the modern LGBTQ+ rights movement. In 2019, New York City announced plans to build a monument to Marsha and Sylvia Rivera in Greenwich Village, the first monument in the city dedicated to transgender people. The announcement came exactly 50 years after the Stonewall riots. More importantly, Marsha's philosophy of radical acceptance and intersectional activism has become central to contemporary LGBTQ+ organizing. Today's activists understand what Marsha knew instinctively, that true liberation must include everyone, especially those who are most marginalized. The phrase, "pay it no mind," has become a rallying cry for people who refuse to apologize for who they are. Marsha's example shows us that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply exist authentically in a world that tells you you shouldn't exist at all. And that's the story of Marsha P. Johnson, the Black trans woman who helped launch a revolution and change the world forever. Her legacy reminds us that progress isn't handed down from above. It's fought for by ordinary people who decide they've had enough. What part of Marsha's story resonated most with you? The Stonewall riots, her work with homeless LGBTQ+ youth, or maybe her philosophy of pay it no mind? Let me know in the comments. If this story opened your eyes like it did mine, please hit that like button and share this video. Marsha's story deserves to be told and retold until everyone knows her name. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell for more stories of unsung heroes who changed the world. And let me know, who should we cover next? Thanks for watching, and remember, sometimes the most revolutionary thing you can do is simply refuse to be invisible. Keep learning, keep fighting, and I'll see you in the next one.